Good evening, everybody. My name is Greg Mansfield. I'm the chair of the Midtown Ventura Community Council. Thanks for joining us virtually tonight. Tonight's meeting is March 13th, 2021. We have a busy meeting tonight, so if you're attending for the first time, welcome. I think we've got a few new faces amongst us. If you're here to hear District Attorney Erik Nasarenko speak, he will be speaking at 7:45. If you have questions for any of our presenters tonight, please use the chat and we'll ask them, or we may call on you if we don't understand the question. And so just to let everybody know, this month is Mental Health Awareness Month, and our first two guests will deal with the topic. And so first off, we have Sergeant Trenner Marchetti. I'm sorry, I'm probably butchering your last name, with the Ventura Police Department. Sergeant Marchetti is the Crisis Intervention Training Coordinator for the department, and is the department liaison with the Ventura County Behavioral Health and MAD. So if you could take it, please. And I think I see also Officer Brunk with the police department there too.
Hi there, good evening. Yes, my name's Trenner Marchetti. Marchetti, anything close. I got a unique first name, a unique last name, anything close. The officiant messed up my first and last name at my wedding. So I joke that at the end of the day, I'm actually technically not married, even though I'm lucky to have a beautiful bride of 12 years now. So yes, I work for the Ventura Police Department. All right, I think I accidentally got muted. Unless that was intentional, I could stop.
Yeah, no, I think John might have done you in there. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I'm a patrol sergeant here with the City of Ventura Police Department. I've been serving Ventura for a little over 15 years. Currently assigned not only to patrol, but I'm also one of the Beat 2 coordinators, which, as a lot of you folks know, Midtown is encompassed in Beat 2. I also happen to be a liaison for the crisis intervention team. And on a more personal note, on the side, I'm also a representative and a volunteer with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. It's a cause I feel passionate about. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about mental health as it relates to the police department and kind of what we're doing both internally and externally around the community. So I think, as we all know, mental health is something that's very important and touches a lot of us in the community in one way, shape, or form, whether it's something that we've experienced individually, whether we have a family member, or we're touched by some of the events that happen out in our community. And the police department is sensitive to that. And as time goes on, we're getting a better understanding of mental health and how it relates and intertwines with a lot of what we're dealing with, both serving the community and seeing, again, in our department, our families, and in all of our lives. So first off, many of our officers are trained in what's called crisis intervention training. It's a program that's it's currently controlled by the county, but they host a number of trainings for almost every law enforcement officer in the county, as well as our dispatchers and some of our non-sworn folks, because it's not just the police officers who show up that have a hand in keeping our community safe or addressing mental health concerns. It's everybody from the operators who pick up the phone, to some of our folks in the building, anybody who serves the city of Ventura. When it's applicable, we send them to this training and try and get everybody on the same page so that we're sensitive to the needs of people suffering either mental health incidents or a crisis, or that just need some special concerns. In addition to having our own officers trained, we also work with the crisis team. The crisis team is a mobile unit of folks that specialize in dealing with people in crisis who will respond to the scene 24/7, under certain criteria to assist us. And this is a little bit more of the move that we are making, I think, nationally, is that law enforcement's presence, we're there to keep everybody safe, but we're taking a little bit more of a reduced role in the actual action that's being taken on the street, because we do receive some mental health training, but we are not mental health professionals. We do what we can. We want to make sure everybody's safe, but we want to have people with the most specialized training to give the most specialized help for everybody. So we work with behavioral health, we work with the local hospitals, and we employ the crisis team. And we also have officers who have an even higher level of training in speaking with people are negotiators. So we actually have incidents sometimes where it may start with trying to have a crisis intervention trained officer show up first, and maybe the incident's not being resolved and there's still a threat to public safety or to that person, and we need the crisis team to respond. Sometimes they respond, and sometimes we still need a little bit more, so we may employ our negotiation team. We call it CNT. We actually had a recent incident on Ventura Avenue where a woman was holding a gun to her head, and we were in a protracted discussion with her and trying to get help, and we had all of those resources. And happily, we were able to resolve it with some less lethal munitions. And she was able to get some help and receive the care she needed. And it was one of those dynamics that easily could have become a lethal force situation. But very fortunately, it didn't have to be. And it's because of some of those resources and approaches we took. So I'm going to talk. I already spoke about a few things. I just want to let you guys know that we also are partaking in the NAMI walk that's coming up. We recognize the importance of mental health awareness. There's various forms of mental health diagnosis that affect people, everything from very, very minor, and we have people who are functioning very well in society and need some either special attention or are going through some stuff themselves. You know, this includes police officers and people from every profession, up to people who have very severe issues that need some help. And we want to have overall awareness for that. We recognize that it's an important, very present thing in society. So we are participating in that walk, and NAMI seeks to raise some funds through this virtual walk in order to help with awareness and help with treatment and basically help the overall cause. So I would urge anybody who's in a position to either participate in the NAMI walk to go to NAMI walks and look up Ventura PD. You're welcome to join our team. You don't need to be a police officer to join our team. We take support in all forms. And if you can walk, great. If you can spread the word, great. If you can donate, great. It's a very noble cause. But basically, I just want to give that kind of overview and thank you guys for your time. But I recognize in speaking to groups like yours, which I have in the past, me getting up here and talking is not what everyone wants to do. You guys might have some questions, and I'm answer those to the best of my ability.
That'd be great. If anybody has any questions, please throw them in the chat right now. You know, I'll kick it off right now. Can you talk about, you know, I've heard many times the issues of lack of mental health as far as beds and facilities. Can you talk about that issue as officers? Is that the case, and how you have to deal with it?
No, she can't.
I'm sorry, there's a little background noise. If you could repeat the question one more time.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things I've heard is issues with a lack of beds for mental health facilities or treatment. Can you talk about, is that a problem, and how you have to try to overcome it if it's a problem?
So at times, you know, and granted, the caveat I'm going to put with all this is COVID has compounded a lot of things. So there are some extra barriers to my understanding about getting people to the beds, and it's for legitimate health concerns. But my understanding is at times we are short beds, and it also depends on what, I guess, what needs we're trying to serve. Because we help out children in need, we help out elderly people, and people basically of all ages. So sometimes there are specialized facilities, and it's a matter of finding the right bed for them to get the right care. So it's a very dynamic situation. So, you know, we don't really have control of the finite amount of beds, but sometimes it's more than that. We're trying to find the right facility for a young, sometimes that's out of the county. Okay.
Yeah. And I've heard that is an issue, that oftentimes they have to go out of county to get the treatment, which is difficult, right? Because they don't have family. If they have family support, they don't necessarily have that family support nearby.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll run through some of the comments pretty quickly. We appreciate our VPD so much. And then do you have the info for the name walk? Or for the... So
if you Google NAMI walk, NAMI walk,
okay,
Ventura, you can see all the different teams, and you can choose whichever one you want to support. You don't have to support us. You can join another team, start your own. But the actual virtual walk is on Saturday, May 22nd.
Okay, great. And then also, can you tell us the two other things that popped up is, can you please tell us what happened around Cabrillo Middle School today?
I I'd love to tell you I knew. I worked nights. It was probably sometime when I was trying to sleep, despite my 5-year-old's best efforts. So I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of
Okay,
my
no
head.
problem. So I'm sorry, you're taking these out of the blue. So it's one of those things. Is Ventura PD aware of any conversations to fund state mental health programs, specifically new facilities?
You know, I don't know
I,
specifically on that. I would tell you that we
Trenner,
would support getting care for all the folks who need mental health, but I'm not currently aware of that now.
Okay, great. Derek, you had a comment?
yeah, I was there has been no conversation about reopening state hospitals. And as far as the number of beds that the county provides right now, they are, Trenner is absolutely right. COVID has kind of really thrown a monkey wrench into some of the things that behavioral health was actually preparing to do, with actually making more beds available for us. And not just Ventura PD, but law enforcement across the county. So there is a shortage of beds, and we're working, diligently with behavioral health and also VCMC to try and address those needs. So.
Okay, that's great. Any other questions? Anybody got it in the chat? If not,
It looks like Marilyn Keller had put her hand up,
okay.
so I'm not sure what that.
Marilyn, you got a question for us?
I do hope to see some sort of a hospital open up to help those who are unable to help themselves mentally. I would like to ask, what percentage you think of the homeless has to do with drug and alcohol abuse versus just hard times?
Okay, so that's an excellent question, and I'll speak to it from my experience. I don't know I'm going to be able to give you an exact percentage, but my assignment prior to being promoted to sergeant, I was actually working in our patrol task force, which deals with mental health and homeless and drug issues. And I'd have to say that a lot of them are very intertwined, and working in that assignment was very eye-opening. We currently, I think, in my professional opinion, have the most resources available at any time in history so far. But there's a lot of resistance still. This includes our shelter, some of the mental health services that we provide. And I will say one of the biggest obstacles we have that we deal with is human motivation. How do we get somebody to want to stop being an alcoholic on the street? Or how do we get somebody to want to take their medication? And I wish I had the answer for all of it, but I will say that there's a very significant portion of the population that is suffering from a combined issue of substance abuse and alcohol and drug abuse. And unfortunately, a lot of our folks that we deal with, even when we're able to get them help and get them stabilized on their proper medication, they either sell or abuse that medication or mix it with alcohol and drugs, and the desired effect is clearly lost. And sometimes it's very much goes the other direction. So as far as a percentage, I don't have that for you. However, it's very present. And I think part of your question was, is this, related to, finances or current situations? A lot of these folks, unfortunately, are very chronically homeless and suffering from mental health. But part of what we did in the patrol task force is we actually had a mental health technician embedded in our unit, and we would go out to the person. We would bring the services to the people so that they would have a person who could make the appointment for them. We would help them set up a place where they can receive mail. We'd actually go out to the river bottoms. I know that's always a topic of concern. And we would bring out our mental health technician and bring out medical services. There's shower facilities. So we're trying to do everything we can to bring the help to people. However, again, the human motivation and people's desire to actually change, that's our biggest obstacle. And it was very eye-opening for me to be in that unit and see the fact that it may be hard for some of us to understand, but there's a lot of people who actually prefer to live in that lifestyle. So it's a very difficult situation.
Okay, thank you. A couple other things that came up. The question is from Mental Health Month in Canada, but the question is that we have, if people can call for any issue, substance abuse, temptation, or self-harm or just feeling depressed. Do we have any counties that have anything like that? I believe we have, people are saying in the chat, 211, correct, that people can call for assistance?
Yes, 211 is is kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of the services that we provide as a county. You know, obviously, if somebody is in danger to themselves or others, you know, you're welcome to call the police department because we want to help those folks before anyone gets hurt. But 211 is also a place where oftentimes our officers and our staff refers people for some of the level of issues that don't necessarily involve the police department.
Perfect. And then one last question. Are the facilities down in the river bottom still there? The domes near the Olivas, I think. And if so, is it having a positive effect?
So we do have, they've been converted to tough sheds, and I believe someone noted that in the remarks here. You know, I can't speak to success of the, I guess, the program or not. I know it's giving those people a form of shelter, but success as a metric, that's probably a little bit beyond my knowledge. That's overseen by another group.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're gonna run on to our next topic. So thanks again for giving us 20 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much for the time.
Nice to see you. So, okay, so second up, we're going to welcome tonight for our spotlight on nonprofits. Rena, am I butchering your first name too?
Rena, close. Yeah,
okay.
Rena.
Rena, thank you. I swear as I've gotten older, I've gotten worse with names. With the Turning Point Foundation, Ms. Sepulveda serves as the contract and grants manager, and I'll let her tell about the great things that Turning Point Foundation is doing.
Yes, and I can answer some of the other questions about Riverhaven, which is the domes that people were referring to, and I responded.
Please do. Thank you.
Saying that we upgraded it with tough sheds, and we're actually doing a whole solar project too. And yes, the program has been very successful. We're full most of the time. We're up to 25 that we can have at one time. And this is really a safety net that there's no other program or housing type like this. And you know, unfortunately, with a lot of the individuals that we work with, they don't have, you know, an ID sometimes or certain items that you need for housing. So Riverhaven is really that bridge housing so that we work with them. We give them counseling, connect them to services, get their IDs, get, you know, a lot of basic things that we take for granted in order to get them into more permanent housing or even into a shelter or transitional housing after that. So yes, Riverhaven is still doing great to answer that question. And yeah, we've upgraded to tough sheds, which are actually better than the domes, the geodesic domes. So that program is alive and well, and it's a great partnership with the city of Ventura and the police department as well. So, now I'll speak on that first, and now I forgot what I was going to say. Now I'll go saying everything else. So yeah, we are a mental health and housing nonprofit. We've been around for over 30 years in Ventura County. Our hub is in Ventura, but we also service Oxnard and Camarillo as well. And we have a variety of housing types, from a shelter to a veterans transitional housing, plus Riverhaven, which is this category of housing that doesn't really fit in any, you know, HUD box or anything like that. To also, we are expanding to adult residential facilities. One is opening on Thompson, 1691 Thompson, for those that can't live independently because of their mental illness. So that's our specialty, is, you know, dealing with mental illness. And so we do that from those that are homeless, veterans, you know, working with families too, who have those that are mentally ill. And that's kind of the crux of what we do, and that's what makes us specialized. So when we have all these different housing types, like a shelter, like Riverhaven, like permanent supportive housing, and then these adult residential facilities, it's all focused on those that have mental illness and being able to provide added support so that, otherwise a lot of these folks would be homeless, or all of them. And that's really our specialty in the county. I know that the shelter in Ventura and in Oxnard, they're doing a fantastic job. And it's a nice partnership to have, but we have a little bit of a specialty with mental illness because that is a specialized population and they have unique barriers and struggles. And, Turning Point has really, really done an amazing job over the years of meeting these needs and they're ever changing, right? And challenging. And I really appreciate the police officers' comments about everything that the police department is doing, which is such a great partnership that we have with them now. And I really, really am so proud of Ventura for really turning a great corner, I think, in addressing all of these needs. But now I can back up and sort of explain all of our programs a little more clearly. So we have Our Place Safe Haven that is located downtown Ventura on Thompson and California, right by the Firestone Tire place. It's right next to there, and on the second floor is Stevenson's place. So the bottom floor is a shelter specialized for those with mental illness. We provide case management, mental health counseling, connection to substance abuse treatment, and just a variety of services tailored to the individual. And on the top floor is Stevenson Place, which is a 10-unit permanent supportive housing for those with mental illness. So they still have all the services that we would provide downstairs, and it's kind of a nice little community all in one building, very nestle tucked away or I think I made up that word. I say nestle tucked, but it's tucked away where it doesn't really cause too much of a distraction for people that have a stigma with shelters. So we're kind of a hidden little gem there. And I do have to give a shout out to Jeff Lambert. I see he's on this call. He definitely was a huge champion of renovating this shelter and really making it shine like that is adjacent to the services that we were actually doing there. So he was a huge champion when he was at the city of Ventura. I don't know if I should talk about that, but thank you, Jeff. I see you're on this call, so I just have to thank you. So even during COVID, we've been able to stay open. We did have a reduced census for a little bit of time, but now we're fully back and using all the health precautions. So that's just the one spot downtown. Then we do have a veterans transitional housing that is on Vint Street. And that really focuses on veterans' needs. Our staff are veterans themselves, a lot of them, and are trained in mental health and especially for PTSD. And we work on transitioning them to permanent housing. A lot of veterans have trauma. And so we really focus to help them with that and then give them a plan to be successful in permanent housing, because there is a lot of homeless veterans, and they, it's sad, but we have one little program helping to mitigate that issue. As well, we have our new program in Ventura. Let me talk about that now too. We have two new programs that are adult residential facilities for those that are they're severely mentally ill and they can't live independently. So we're working with VCBH on that, and we will provide all these supportive services. Basically, we provide meals and everything as well. And we're gonna be able to move in residents any day now. We're just finishing our license with the state of California to operate it and take it over. And so this is really exciting because a lot of these businesses they're called boarding care, but they are family owned, And they're all aged out. Some of their kids don't want to take over the family business. So all these people are going to be homeless. And that's goes throughout the county. And so we were able to take over the operations of Thompson Place and do the same thing for Oak Place in Camarillo. And they were formerly known as La Siesta, which you probably have seen that and driven by it and was like, what's going on there? Because it looked terrible off Thompson. And we worked with Luke McCarthy and Channel Islands Holding Company. They purchased it, and VCBH and us, to make this a great living space for those that can't live independently. So it's kind of the perfect trifecta of public, private, and nonprofit government partnership. Okay, I said 4 things, but anyway, private, government and nonprofit partnership to really make Thompson Place a wonderful place for people to live that can't live independently. And we're doing the same thing in Camarillo. And then we also have an employment training program called Growing Works. That's a nonprofit nursery to help those learn job skills and just have an overall wellness program. And that has been a great success. And that people from all over the county go there to do that. And all of our programs really combined and intertwined to make this whole, continuum of care of services, not to steal the COC's words, but we do that in housing and in day programs. And I don't know does anyone have any questions? I'm so not good at talking on Zoom, so forgive me. I wish I was in person and could read the room a little better.
You and every teacher in America, I think, was probably the same thing. So
Yeah.
please put the questions into the chat that you have. But I'll just throw out a couple. What's your census numbers? I mean, how many people are you caring for?
1,000 a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And then as questions come in, do you got a personal success story that you can tell me about one of the cases that you treated or have dealt with that just stands out to you? Obviously, you can't give away names or anything, but if you can talk generally how the success occurred.
Okay, so we do have a lot of success stories, even though it is hard dealing with those with mental illness. I know that there was a veteran who he was actually a World War II veteran out our transitional housing. And obviously he was older, but he was able to transition to permanent housing. But yet we gave him all the support services because he was older. And this is not, I don't know if this is a success story, but I just want to talk about this individual because he carried everything in a vest. All of his identifications, his DDT 214, I forget the exact name of his military identification, everything. And he was on the streets for about 10 years, but 20 years, kept everything in his vest. And went through our program, was able to get permanent housing before he did end up passing away. But so that's not really a good success story necessarily, but
well, that's also
it is a real human story. Yeah. And the fact that we're able to provide services to people, even, when they're housed and they've moved on from some of our programs to, we still provide all these services, and everyone loves coming back to Turning Point. They feel it's a family, and they come back. They do barbecues. Some veterans come back and throw barbecues for the other veterans at our veterans transitional housing.
That's really sweet. Okay, so two questions for you, and we'll cut you loose. Can you talk about the new senior 36-bed housing?
Yes, I can. That's the one that's going to be titled Oak Place. It was known as Hickory House. And so we are taking over operations of that facility. And it'll have all of the services that Turning Point can provide. And it's, again, in contract with UCBH, and also Channel Islands Holding Company purchased that land. And they are doing some renovations, and we are the contractor with UCBH, and we have the license from the state of California. So there's a lot of quality care that's going to go into this that wasn't there before, which is really a good thing. We have all these resources now to do that. They weren't necessarily held to the same standard before. And so I think that this is a really good thing for the county. Because otherwise, yeah, these people really can't live independently, and they're going to get all the benefits of the services that Turning Point provides. So
Perfect. And then I think the last thing is that somebody asked, can you share your email contact?
Yes, I
Or
can.
phone number, if you want to put in the chat, that would be great.
I can do that.
Looking through, I don't see any other questions for the most part. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm going to keep the train moving. So
Yes.
thanks again, and good luck to you. I appreciate it. And you guys are nonprofit, correct? So people can
Yes.
make deductions or estates, or
Yes.
anything of that sort can go to the Turning Point Foundation.
Yes, you can visit our website too, www.turningpointfoundation.org. But I'm also going to do my contacts. So just, yeah, if anybody has other questions or want information about our other programs, just email me, call me. I'll put my phone number and my email. Yeah, in there. Yes.
Thank you again. I
All
appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you all.
Nice to see you. So, okay, so third coming up, joining us now is Wes Woods. He's the new West County reporter for the Ventura County Star. He has a monumental task of him keeping the pulse on government, education, everything else. I saw him earlier. Are you there, Wes?
Yeah. Hey, Greg. Could you see me? Or
Yep, we got you.
cool. Okay. Yeah. So thank you for the great introduction. I literally, I joined the Star in March, late March, actually. So what is that? A little more than a month, and I'm still kind of getting adjusted to everything. But yeah, so West County reporter, what that means is Ventura is maybe the center point, I would say, but it also includes Santa Paula, Ojai, Fillmore, little bit of housing, a little bit of homelessness coverage, and honestly, whatever else they kind of throw at me, depending on the breaking news of the day sometimes. So basically, yeah, I've just been trying to get to as many meetings as possible, trying to meet people in COVID. That's obviously sort of tougher than usual, but that's why I'm grateful that you invited me here. A little bit about my background. Basically, I graduated from Cal State Long Beach, in the early 2000s with a print journalism degree, which seems like a long time ago now because everything is obviously digital. But every paper that I've worked for has been digital, so it was never sort of a huge transition for me. So basically, from Cal State Long Beach, I ended up interning with now the Star's sister paper, The Desert Sun, out in Palm Springs. I covered a couple of cities out there. Desert Hot Springs, Cathedral City, and Palm Springs. Then I moved over to the Press Enterprise newspaper, which is based out of Riverside, but they had a bureau in Palm Springs. Covered pretty much the same sort of cities. And I'd say right around 2006, I moved over to the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin. And there I actually covered breaking news, which actually took me to covering a tent city in Ontario. So, which is they sort of had their own tent city for the homeless population there. But it didn't last very long. And after a while, I forget if it was lawsuits or what, but it basically kind of just got torn down. And I think the city had an ordinance passed about it or something like that, but those issues never go away. And that's something that I've definitely been very sensitive to and have always wanted to learn more. And actually Ventura has, it's just amazing in terms of all the different things going on here. And Rena was great, actually, because I had been wanting to learn a little bit more about Turning Point Foundation. So from my perspective, just being here one month, that's great, and something that I definitely want to learn more about. After the Daily Bulletin, I moved on to the LA Daily News, which is in Woodland Hills, and I covered crime for them, basically. And that area, literally, it was the valley, it was the Antelope Valley, and it was a lot of, unfortunately, chasing a lot of crimes. So it was everything from fire to crashes to fatalities, you name it. And when you're in a position like that, it pretty much gets you ready for anything, basically. And so that's been very beneficial for my career too, just in terms of if I don't know something, I can make a call, I can talk with my colleagues and figure it out pretty quickly. So from there, real quick, they had kind of massive layoffs hit the Daily News in February of 2018. And then I briefly worked at KTLA sort of on their web desk for about 3 months, but it wasn't full time. And then I ended up going to the Outlook newspaper in La Cañada, Flint Ridge. And there I basically just covered the city of La Cañada, their schools, features, and all the crime there. And I worked there basically until April of 2020. And then obviously with COVID, there was unfortunately massive layoffs everywhere. And so from that, ended up kind of doing a little bit of freelance work. And I actually was an election assistant for Ventura County during the November elections. And so I actually worked there, and that was really, really exciting because I had never I've written a lot about politics, but I've never actually participated in the whole process of kind of telling people where to vote, sort of learning about where the actual ballots go, things such as things of that nature, and basically just kind of watching the process from the inside out. And then after that, I was sending out my resume looking for full-time work, and I caught on with the Ventura County Star. And so I started in March. And let me clarify too. So I cover Ventura, but it's strictly, I would say, mostly government. We do have a school reporter who covers the entire county. So I will help out with that, but it mostly seems, at least so far, kind of more cities, features. In terms of crime, we have a public safety team at the newspaper. So they'll write up a lot of different sort of mostly crime briefs and sort of larger stories on that. Yeah, that's pretty much brings me to here now. And I didn't want to talk too much about myself because we're on a schedule, but also I wanted to know kind of what you guys were looking for from me, or if you had any specific questions. I will say, being a month in, I might not be able to answer them all, but I definitely can get back to you with an answer.
So if anybody wants to add questions to the chat, please do. I'll just kick out the first question. What kind of stories are you looking for?
Yeah, man, it's almost like, what am I not looking for? So basically just stories that I really love have human face, human interest to them. I love telling people stories. Oftentimes with government stories, you can get into policies a lot, but it doesn't always sort of show the human side of things. So I basically like to just show how sort of anything can affect people. So really that can be a feature, that can be, let's say it's something as simple as, a pothole or something like that. Well, if I can find, just a driver, sorry, that's my cat, I apologize for that. If I can find someone personally affected by that and tell the story kind of through their eyes, that is what I am looking for. And that is what I personally get excited by. So, and yeah, this is my 18-year-old cat. her name is Crystal, and so she gets a little bit jealous if I'm somewhere too long. So I apologize.
We've all been there. We've all been there. Okay, so far you're getting a lot of love, but no questions so far. Wes, welcome. I guess Stephanie asked you, Caldwell, can you, how do we reach you? What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, let me drop my my email in here once we're done. It's a little bit long. It's my full name, Wesley Woods, wesley.woodsii@vcstar.com, but I will drop that in the chat. And that is the best way because gosh, with the number at the Star, unfortunately, I haven't been inside the Star except for like twice. So the best way to reach me is definitely through email because I see those and I will get right back. So let me drop that in right now, actually. So.
And then Wes, the other thing, I think I have some inside knowledge a little bit, but am I right? You're not new to the county, right? You've got relations that know the county pretty well. Is that
Yes. Yes. So
I'm trying not to out yet, but I guess I am in somewhat ways on that.
No, and I probably should have mentioned that too. So my wife, Wendy Leung, was the Oxnard reporter, and she just left basically earlier this year. She covered Oxnard, man, from the kind of late 2000s all the way up through early 2010s through last year. And so, yeah, she's been a great resource as well. We love Ventura. I've done so many things there in terms of breweries, eateries, and yeah, she helps me out. And she took a position elsewhere with the Center of Biological Diversity. So. Yes, so I do have that contact too.
Perfect, great. And so you'll put your contact information into the chat so we can know how to get a hold of you? Perfect.
Yeah,
so
right now.
So thanks for joining us. And we enjoyed the cat, Crystal. So we appreciate that appearance too. So we're gonna move on. So again, welcome. And feel free to reach out to any of us if you ever have any questions or need some background.
Thank you. I will definitely take you up on that. I appreciate that.
Great. Nice to meet you, Wes. I appreciate it. So,
yes,
okay. So finally coming up, we're excited to welcome new Ventura County District Attorney Erik Nasarenko. Erik was unanimously appointed District Attorney in January. Previously, he had served as on the Ventura County, on the Ventura City Council, being elected in 2013. He probably served on the toughest stretch I think on the city council with the Thomas fire happening in 2017. But I think all that was probably good training for his new position. So Erik, I think you're there. Can you take it away for us?
I can. Great to see you, Greg, and nice to be back in front of Midtown. I just want everyone to know I'm happy to answer any questions so long as they have nothing to do with water rates. It's just been a great 3.5 months since my appointment, end of January of this year. And let me begin by sharing with you one of my first undertakings, which was to change up the management team here at the Ventura County DA's office a little bit to arrive at a mixture of both continuity from the past as well as change. And one of my first positions to name was that of Lisa Ladakanian. She is the chief assistant, which means the number 2 in the Ventura County DA's office. And she's also a Asian American woman. And I want to speak about that shortly and what that means for our county and for our office. She is the first ever Asian American chief assistant in Ventura County history. And I'm very proud to have her as my number 2. And we also were able to find from Los Angeles County, Paul Nunez, who is a chief deputy overseeing criminal prosecutions, which essentially are the units within the office that prosecute gangs, narcotics, homicides, as well as They investigate officer-involved shootings, and he has extensive experience, in fact, 25 years in the LADA's office. And he brings both a new perspective as well as a set of fresh eyes. And he is the first Latino chief deputy in Ventura County history. And I'm very proud to have Paul joining us. Why is that important? I want to address why I think that's essential to our office and just to the way we look at our cases. Lisa, for example, has experienced in her own life racial slurs, racial epithets because of her Asian American ancestry. So when hate crimes come in involving the AAPI community, she will have a different perspective. She'll be informed by a different set of experiences because what she has experienced herself. With respect to Paul, he is the grandson of braceros. He grew up.
I don't know how you hear it.
He grew up as the grandson of field workers in the Central Valley. He too has a different set of experiences, and that will inform his case analysis and decision making. He also, when he was in Los Angeles, was very instrumental in establishing a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee within the LA County DA's office. And he continues to serve as the president of the LA County Prosecutors Association. And he has also really looked at, and is doing so for me as well, how to diversify our office, how to reflect the County of Ventura, which, as you know, is now approximately 43% Latinx, and how to go ahead and bring in individuals from underserved communities who can look at cases, who can form sentencings and dispositions that reflect a diversity of thought, experience, as well as opinion. So I'm very pleased to have both Paul and Lisa serving me in the capacity of Chief Assistant and Chief Deputy. Now, I want to talk a little bit about hate crimes. I mentioned that earlier. For those of you who are unaware, in 2020, during the pandemic year, in all of Ventura County, we had 4 cases that were brought to us wherein some type of hate crime special allegation was alleged. And what that means is there's usually an underlying crime, some type of conduct, whether it be an assault, an act of vandalism, a battery, brandishing a weapon or a knife. And then attached to that is the allegation that when they engage in that conduct, they did so because it was substantially motivated by racial animus towards a protected category, sexual orientation, national origin, religion, race, or ethnicity. So in all of 2020, from throughout Ventura County, 4 cases were brought to the Ventura County District Attorney's Office for hate crime consideration. Now, already just in the first 4.5 months of 2021, we've already received 5. So we're seeing an upward trend. It's disturbing. It's something to monitor, follow, and watch. But nevertheless, it's something that I take extremely seriously. And what we're trying to determine, and what we don't necessarily know right now, is this a result of heightened consciousness and awareness among the public because of what's happening in the AAPI community in terms of hate crimes and being victims of such. As you probably read just a couple days ago in Georgia, the prosecutor there found that the alleged murder of several of the women of Asian ancestry was indeed an alleged hate crime. And we're seeing other acts in San Francisco and elsewhere, and we're seeing it obviously here in Ventura County. So I think both the local and the national consciousness has been raised, and that can create greater reporting. But we have in our office a very seasoned and dedicated hate crime prosecutor. He's with our gang unit. He looks at these cases. He has a skill set and an expertise that allows him to do so. And it's something that I want to continue to follow and monitor. And I want to give you kind of an example of a hate crime prosecution because it can help perhaps inform Midtown and those of you who are on this Zoom call what a hate crime looks like. This is a case that's resolved, so I'm able to speak more freely about it. And a woman of Middle Eastern origin was leaving the In-N-Out Burger in Camarillo. She was accompanied by 2 of her sons, and she spoke to them in Arabic. She is a woman of Syrian descent. And as she did so, there was somebody on that same sidewalk who basically began a number of racial slurs and epithets because of her Arabic origin and the way she was speaking and the dialect she was using. And then thereafter, this woman was shoved. Therein, a battery occurred. And in the course of calling 911 to report it, she was mocked because of her accent and the way she was describing the offense. So in that case, the individual was sentenced to 20 days in jail. They were given a year of probation. They also had to fulfill community service. And speaking of community service, I want to point out that in the past, pre-COVID, when the museums were open and the public could attend them, we would typically have placed as a term and condition of their probation a requirement that they attend the Museum of Tolerance. That is the Simon Wiesenthal Museum in Los Angeles. And I hope with the resumption of activity, that is the reopening of public spaces and places, that we can again ask for that before the court as a condition. And I think it's important. One, it exposes individuals obviously to the horrors of the Holocaust, the crimes against humanity, and also it helps people hopefully to understand that when these incidents occur, when they spiral, when they escalate, really horrific things can happen. So I hope that again, when there are any types of hate crime prosecutions, and obviously we hope that we don't have to prosecute for hate crimes, but nevertheless, they will come before us, that can be a requirement to help educate and rehabilitate and stop any potential reoffense. So something to watch, something I wanted to share with Midtown. And then I want to pivot to another topic that's very important to me. And I spoke about it to the Board of Supervisors during the interview process, end of January of this year. And that's the area of mental health. And my goal has been, one, we have to identify ways to reduce recidivism among mentally ill offenders, as well as find alternative sentences to incarceration. Now, obviously, there are going to be situations where the mentally ill offender is so serious or so violent a threat that we have to continue to confine them. They pose a threat to our safety and our well-being, and we have to make sure that they cannot harm others. But there are other instances where there are individuals who we can look at through a different lens. And to that point, we are going to establish in the Ventura County District Attorney's Office, for the first time in our history, a dedicated specialized mental health unit. In fact, thanks to the great efforts of the County of Ventura, in particular, our county CEO and his budget team, there will be a proposal in the upcoming 2021-22 budget to go ahead and hopefully fund 2 dedicated mental health prosecutors who would serve in this unit. And the idea is, okay, we have to look at our cases differently as prosecutors. There will be instances where we need to go the traditional route. That is, they need to be punished in jail. There need to be consequences for their behavior, but there are going to be other instances where I'd like individuals to receive some type of medication-assisted treatment as a term and condition of their probation, or perhaps they have weekly visits to an outpatient clinic as a term and condition of their probation. The whole idea here is to help these individuals get support, intervention, and the resources they need to end the recidivist cycle of jail, release, back on the streets, and then back into jail, and then release, and then the cycle continues to perpetuate itself. Towards that end, we will be writing, that is a consultant that we have recently sought to help guide the mental health unit, a document of mental health policies and procedures. And this is in many ways based upon the work of former Los Angeles County DA Jackie Lacey. And this will be the first time in the district attorney's office that we've had a set of documents that will guide the DAs in terms of how they treat, how they evaluate, how they sentence, and how they resolve our mental health cases. It will look specifically at something that former DA Jackie Lacey looked at, and that is key intercept points. That is the intercept points wherein the mentally ill interface with the criminal justice system. That can be anywhere from a 911 call, that can be in the emergency room, that can be upon booking or incarceration at the main jail, or it can be upon release, because we want individuals, if they suffer from mental illness, if they are released, to be released into some type of treatment plan. So again, that we can end the cycle of recidivism and jail streets and then back to jail. So I'm excited about both the mental health unit that will hopefully take fruition here soon, as well as the consultant who will help to draft our first ever mental health policies and procedures. I'm going to take questions, but I just want to end on this one note, and that is regarding COVID-19. Obviously, something that we have all had to face and encounter throughout the last 14 months. I'm very pleased with the Office of the District Attorney. Approximately 90% of our employees have received vaccinations, and that's important, one from a public health perspective, as well as from a criminal justice one. From a public health perspective, when we're vaccinated, we're able to go ahead and stop the spread, to reduce illness and obviously deaths. And also, we want our DAs to be able to go safely and securely into our courtrooms. We want our victim advocates to do the same, as well as our investigators with our Bureau of Investigation. And we want those who interact with the court system, the courthouse, and the public to feel like they're vaccinated and they can do so. We've had approximately, in the 14 months of the pandemic, about 31 jury trials. So we have been able to continue to maintain jury trials, albeit at a significantly slower pace. To give you some context for that number, I mean, typically we have around 200 or so jury trials on an annual basis. So obviously a significant departure, but we've kept the wheels of justice moving, and we've done so specifically in 2 of our larger courtrooms. For those of you who are familiar with the Hall of Justice, we have courtroom 10 as well as courtroom 22, and they're larger courtrooms, thus judges, and we've had a fantastic bench who's been able to accommodate these jury trials, have been able to socially distance jurors, keep them at minimum 6 feet apart. They are wearing masks, obviously. And it's been a little bit different for the prosecutor as well as for the defense attorney, because you don't have your traditional, what we call jury box, 12 to 14 jurors adjacent to or nearby a witness stand. Rather, in these larger courtrooms, one of which was formerly for traffic matters, you have them spread out throughout. So you as the prosecutor, as the defense attorney, have to actually kind of turn around. You're not facing the traditional jury box or the judge, but you're facing all of the jurors who are spread out and socially distanced throughout the courtroom. It's interesting. I read in the Daily Journal that Orange County has done 170 jury trials, and the Central District of California has just, I understand, resumed their first one in about 13 and a half months this week. So you're going to see, I believe, with the resumption of the opening of businesses, public spaces, the relaxation, the movement into lower tiers, even more jury trials, I believe, in the months and weeks to come. But I want to stop on that note. I know you have a number of questions. I'm happy to address them. And Greg, it's great to see you again. I want to thank you for the invitation to speak with the Midtown Community Council. I also want to acknowledge, obviously, Councilmember Doug Halter. Doug, it was a pleasure working with you, although it was too brief an amount of time. And I also want to acknowledge, obviously, Dan Long and Karen Flock, who sent me the invitation to be with you this evening, and happy to take your questions.
Well, great. So if everybody can put the questions into the chat, we'll get through them. And Eric, you can always read through the chat if you want to do it.
Okay.
I have a few questions in advance from the board. And again, ask many questions. Eric doesn't bill by the hour anymore, so we can get in any legal advice you need, he can help you. So the first question is, you have said that you would go into community to educate the public and on the criminal justice system, and to seek residents' input on how to make the system more fair and just for everyone. What steps are you currently taking to bring this about?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I should have mentioned that in my opening remarks. One of my central thrusts has been community engagement. And let me speak about how I'm soliciting diverse viewpoints from the community to address the question. I've spoken to city councils as I pledged to the board to do so. I've already spoken to Port Hueneme, to Oxnard, to Thousand Oaks. I've spoken to different bar associations, the Mexican American Bar, representatives from the Mexican American Bar Association, the Asian American Pacific Islander Bar Association. I've spoken to representatives of Black Lawyers Ventura County. I've spoken before Rotaries to get their input and to answer their questions. About a week and a half ago, I was on a Spanish language radio program in Oxnard to talk primarily about the growing problem of notorio fraud. This is basically a scam, a fraud wherein someone will advertise themselves as a notorio, which is a word in Central and Latin America associated with attorney services, and they will go ahead and provide so-called legal advice. Oftentimes they'll promise to do so, take money, and then you'll never see them again. But obviously, this is a scam that preys upon the immigrant community, those who may be undocumented. So I have spoken to the Spanish language community on that topic, and I'll continue to do so. And really, you know, it's just doing formats like this. I mean, before I came on this program, I spoke to a group of individuals in Moore Park because I always like to be kind of mindful that when you speak to the West County, it's also good to speak to the East County and vice versa. So I'm always interested and willing in speaking with others, getting their insight and opinions, and that's something I'll continue to do as your district attorney.
Perfect. Okay, so the other questions I got is, what's the data on Ventura County's disparities in arrest and prosecutions by race and ethnicity? Sorry, I always stumble on that word. And how do you look to address this issue?
I don't have that information. I'd be happy to go ahead and provide it. You know, we have to make sure that any prosecution is like for like. What that means is we have to, as a matter of law, make sure that when somebody is sentenced, when somebody is arraigned, that we treat similar cases in similar contexts similarly. Now, obviously, the sort of the details matter here. You know, you can have two defendants, one of whom has a significant record, the other of whom does not. You can have one individual who caused substantial harm to a victim and their potential criminal exposure is much more serious than someone else. But my idea, frankly, and what I'm working with within the office is to create what's called a dashboard. That is it's a data tool that builds openness and transparency so that members of the public, and this has been used, by the way, in the Manhattan DA's office. That's where I've seen it used, and it's sort of something that I'd like to emulate, where any member of the public can go ahead and find information about who we're charging, their age, their gender, their ethnicity, what sort of sentences are being imposed. And the whole idea here is to create that transparency and openness that I think the questioner would like to see, and I think that the public deserves.
Okay, and second part, or another part of the question is, what can your office do to address mental health issues that enter the criminal justice system?
I think I talked a little bit about that in my opening remarks. One, it's creating the dedicated specialized mental health unit. Two, it's developing the policies and procedures to help inform their decision-making. And three, I think it's just kind of looking at cases differently as prosecutors. It's a bit of a paradigm shift in our thinking. And what I mean by that is I want my prosecutors to go into the courtroom, work with the court, work with defense counsels to identify when it's safe to do so. And I want to emphasize when safe to do so, alternative sentences other than incarceration.
Okay, perfect. And then another question, Eric, was recently you dismissed charges against, is it Ignacio Exta Jr. because of misconduct?
Exta, correct, yes.
Exta. Is your office reviewing every case involved with the prosecutor investigator? And what's the status with those employees with your office?
Well, there's no cause to do so. I mean, we look at that case and we say to ourselves, okay, what are the questions before us? The first of which is there was what we call exculpatory evidence, evidence that was specific to the credibility of a witness. And looking back through the file of the prosecutor, as well as the trial transcripts, it doesn't appear that it was provided. Now, was that in any way we determined as a result of our investigation willful or deliberate? No, not on the part of the Oxnard Police Department or on the part of the prosecutor. But nevertheless, we were required, at least I believed, it was one of my first acts when I became DA, to reverse the conviction. So that was kind of step number one. Step number two was, okay, now that the conviction's reversed, District Attorney, you have 60 days to determine whether or not the case should be retried. And, I looked at the state of the evidence. I looked at changes in law, credibility questions regarding some of the witnesses. And I made a call very early to make sure that we didn't continue to kind of just look at this every day. I wanted to make a decision early, one that was based upon a careful review by a senior prosecutor. His opinion was to go ahead and not retry it, to go ahead and dismiss the case. And I agreed with his opinion, and that's exactly what we did.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna dive into the comments now. Eric, you want me to read them, or I'll just start up there. It says this is from Jeffrey Lambert. Eric is a real deal. I recall when he cut a family vacation short after LGBTQ plus hate crime shooting at a gay nightclub to return to Ventura for a local candlelight vigil. He showed great empathy and support for our community. Okay, so the next one, Marilyn has a question for you. Do hate crimes towards Asians have to do with the alleged accusations of COVID originating in China?
Yeah, Jeff, I want to thank you. I just want to, I'll go back to the second question. And I remember vividly what happened at the Pulse nightclub and speaking on the steps and the candlelight vigil at City Hall. And thank you for acknowledging that. Just a severe act of gun violence and obviously a hate crime directed at individuals of a sexual orientation. With respect to the second question, of those cases that I mentioned, the 5 so far in 2021, one of the cases involved whom the defendant thought were Asian. They ended up, in this case, they were of another nationality, but I don't want to go too much into the facts because it's still a pending case, but I haven't seen specific remarks directed at COVID-19 and sort of, these derogatory remarks about the Wuhan flu and things, Kong flu, things like that. So I have not seen that yet. That doesn't mean it's not happening, but it hasn't been a part of the prosecutions that have been presented to date.
Okay, and then following up with a question from Jen, is there a specific group that's being targeted or a range of ethnicities?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, what I've seen in these 5 and what our office has seen, it really kind of, there's no pattern. So for example, that case I mentioned involving the Syrian woman, the defendant in that case was a Latina. And there was a case that arose last week. It's pending. It's an allegation only at a Circle K. And the alleged perpetrator is white and the alleged victim is African American. And then the one I just mentioned before, it was somebody who believed that the individuals were Asian when in fact they were from Central America. So it's just, there's no kind of trend here. It seems to be cutting across a lot of different ethnic lines.
That's great. Okay, thank you for that answer. Bobby Grantham wanted to say discrimination has no place in a civilized society. And Sheree and Rena wanted to thank you for your focus on mental health. And then, okay, so a question coming from Dan here. So it's a long one, so be prepared. There's a woman who lives next to a bus bench in front of Vaughn's on Thompson Boulevard on Borchard. The MVCC board has endorsed 8 recommendations from the Ventura County Behavioral Advisory Board to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors that would try to address some of the different strategies to help people who needed more than a few days of care. It breaks my heart that we can allow this to happen to a human being, whereas if it was a dog that was stranded there, we would have found it shelter already. Do you see the laws being changed to allow medical intervention to help this woman and others like her who are obviously suffering and need the help, whether they agree or not, agree to it or not?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I believe strongly that we need to have a greater network of inpatient psychiatric beds for the purpose of involuntary confinement. You know, I'm not one of these individuals who feels like each individual needs to go ahead and be confined against their will. But nevertheless, there are certain situations where an individual needs to be placed on a hold, they need to be stabilized, and they need immediate crisis stabilization or psychiatric care. The primary safety net in our county, as most of you know, is at Hillmont. I mean, the county is really undertaking the right effort to expand the number of inpatient psychiatric beds. I believe it's from 36 to 43. So we are going to see more psychiatric beds available. But it's not just a county problem. It's also one that involves our private healthcare providers, especially in the East County. I mean, I would call upon Adventist Simi Valley and Los Robles to really make sure that they too have psychiatric beds available to help people who need psychiatric confinement. And then long-term, there is going to be a mental health rehabilitation center that will most likely be in the West County, which will have a number of additional beds that will come online in a couple of years. And then we're also going to have a new jail facility that will specialize in the treatment and help and assistance for those suffering from mental distress or disorders who are also charged with some type of crime. So there are going to be some facilities that will come forward in the near future, but I think I agree with the premise of the question. We need more. And also the question talks about, you know, changes to the LPS, the Lanterman, I think it's Petrus Short Act. And, you know, I don't want to go too into it, but that's a law whose origins are in the late 1960s. And it's time, I believe, for it to be updated to comport with 2021 and what we know about the psychiatric and mental health community today.
Great. So Mary Hafner had said, Eric understands the needs of people with mental illness. He knows how important jail diversion is, and I'm sure his leadership will be a great asset to Ventura County.
Oh, thank you, Mary. I appreciate that comment. And thank you for leadership, by the way.
Okay, so Christine Burke asks, If someone would like to contact you about a legal issue, what would be the protocol?
Uh,
I know this could be a
Yeah,
could be a
I'm
delicate
pausing.
question.
I'm pausing because I'm in a sensitive situation. I mean, I don't handle my own cases, and I have to be very careful and circumspect about cases that are currently before the criminal court system, or that are pending, or that are being investigated. But to answer the question, they can email my office at my email address. That's eric.nasarenko@ventura.org. But I just want to let everybody know I'm not always able to respond to every inquiry, every legal matter that comes before me. I mean, in some cases, it would just be wholly inappropriate for me to do so. So I just want to manage expectations here. I want to be receptive. I want to hear about ideas and thoughts. But when it comes to individual particular matters involving a named defendant or an ongoing investigation, oftentimes the most I can do is just refer it to the prosecutor who's handling it, make sure it's in the right hands, and then I have to kind of step away.
Okay, Jen asked, what do you see as the main issues affecting Ventura as far as crime related?
Yeah, we continue to have vagrancy challenges, and that's intertwined obviously with homelessness. It's intertwined with just sort of our inability, I believe, to make sure that we have suitable alternative sentences, and we're working on that. I also think, we have to always be mindful of the fact that property crimes are something that happens in Ventura. We're not immune to what we've seen throughout the county, and that is catalytic converter thefts. Those precious metals are very valuable. And also, we continue as a city to have a lot of cars that are left unlocked, a lot of individuals who break into cars when they are locked. And I think, property crimes are something that will continue to be a problem in Ventura. And it's obviously something that we have to address as prosecutors, as police, and also as a society.
Okay, what are your feelings about reducing the size of juries to 9 or even 7 people in order to speed up trials? Didn't see that question coming from Dennis. Thank you.
Yeah, God, what a question. I'd have to think about that. I don't know really at first impression how I feel. It's interesting. We're interviewing somebody from Nevada, somebody who's a prosecutor in that state. And what I learned for the first time in that interview is that in Nevada, with the exception of DV misdemeanor cases, their misdemeanor prosecutions are bench trials. They are not jury trials. And I mention that because the amount of time and resources you save with a bench trial as opposed to a jury trial is quite substantial. I don't really know how I feel about that. I would have to think about it, consider, contemplate, study it. I can certainly see advantages and disadvantages, but all these decisions are done in concert with the defense bar, with the bench, and obviously with the California legislature. So it's not my decision alone, obviously.
Okay, and then Bert Handy asked, how has your upbringing and family history formed your outlook?
Oh, wow. Thanks, Bert, for the question. And nice to see you on this. Well, I'll give you 2 very specific examples. I had a loved one who suffered from mental illness, as well as a co-occurring substance use disorder. So obviously, what I am proposing and embarking on is in part kind of personal reflection and just a deep desire to make changes that are meaningful, to honor her legacy, and to make sure that we proceed in a way that would make others realize that there is more of a support network out there for them. The other thing is I'm the son of immigrants. My parents came here in the early 1950s. They were both born in Ukraine. They were raised in refugee camps. They lived there for a number of years. And, they came to this country as immigrants, like so many of our county residents. And, when I talk about hate crimes, when I talk about bringing on Lisa and Paul, I think my own background as the son of immigrants, it kind of, it gives me another perspective. It gives me maybe a little bit more empathy towards these cases because of that rearing.
Eric, did I hear you correctly? You're saying your parents, or was it your grandparents?
Parents.
Wow,
Yeah.
it was that close to you. So it's not the elder's story that you heard from the distant past.
No. I mean, it's, it's when you're the son of immigrants, it's also interesting. This was, I was born in 1970, and the Cold War was raging, and we didn't really talk about kind of our ancestry in what was then the Soviet Union. But it's interesting now with how things are different. I think we talk about it a little bit more openly. We're a little bit more willing to kind of discuss the background and kind of the horrors of fascism and totalitarianism and basically Nazism that they fled. And, it made an impact on me.
Yeah, I would imagine it absolutely would. Okay, so the only other thing is Dan had a quick comment. He just wants to say thank you for changing the district attorney's office that relates to the ever-changing social needs, diversity, and transparency here. And so happy you are serving all of us in the job that you were made for.
Oh, that's great, Dan. Thank you for the comment. I love the job. It's an honor to be in this seat, and I want to continue to do community engagement. So I hope you'll invite me back.
Perfect. And then the only other couple that came in off the internet was the other questions was, what's the number one crime that you guys prosecute? Or, in terms of volume, I think is what they meant.
Yeah. One of the, I don't know statistically if this is the highest case we file and then seek prosecution of, but we have a high number of driving under the influence cases in our misdemeanor section. And, it's funny, Greg, I was speaking, I was doing a video recording, and one of the questions was, have you seen fewer driving under the influence prosecutions because of the pandemic? That is, fewer cars on the road, fewer motorists driving. And, the answer is no. Unfortunately, even despite Uber and Lyft, according to some of the prosecutors in the office, we continue to have cases of impaired drivers on our highways and roadways.
Okay, and then the other one that came in kind of along the same line is, are you having to beef up your cybercrime unit? Obviously, with everything that's going on from ransomware to, other issues. Is that something you're having to look at to beef up? And obviously, it takes a technical person to work in those units.
Yeah, I mean, very much so. I mean, we're fortunate to have members of the Bureau of Investigation who specialize in digital crimes. One that I didn't mention earlier is real estate fraud. And we've seen kind of an uptick in that because the real estate market is just so overheated right now. But, this is individuals who will advertise homes for rent that are already rented or they don't own. We see a lot of that. And, it's also just, it's really transformed criminal prosecutions. I can't emphasize it enough. You have so much digital data now in so many cases, whether it comes from body worn camera, whether it comes from Ring software out of a home, or whether it's just cell phones themselves. I mean, there's so much data on them. So that creates a real additional layer of complexity It's kind of an area of gargantuan evidence in some cases, but it's also frankly helped us to resolve cases, and in many cases just the opposite. It's helped us to determine that this person does not warrant further prosecution, and they should no longer be charged. So it goes both ways.
Okay, perfect. And then the only other one that came in was another question. I swear this is it from the internet, was the cold case. Do you have an interest in trying to solve some of these cold cases? Personally, I little past it. I had graduated from Cal Poly, but I've always followed the Kristen Smart case that's happened up in San Luis Obispo. And I think it's amazing to see that they're able to put something together 25 years afterwards, or the Garden State Killer or Golden State Killer that I know your office participated in. So could you talk about that?
Yeah, I want to commend and acknowledge John Barrick. He's one of our senior homicide prosecutors. You may have read over the weekend that finally the identity of a woman whose body was found in Delano in Kern County was revealed. And John was the prosecutor in that case. And the reason we had jurisdiction is that this defendant had murdered and sexually assaulted a woman in our county, as well as a woman that I just mentioned in Kern County. And, you know, these cases arose in, I believe it was 1980 or thereabouts, very long time ago, but they're so important to the victims, their families, to make sure that they are honored and remembered, you know, even if it is 41 years later. You know, in that case, familial genealogy was very helpful. The transformation in DNA evidence is really helping us to go back in some of these cold cases, because that case was dormant for a number of years until John brought it to prosecution. But yeah, I mean, obviously we have a cold case specialist in the office, and it'll continue to be an area that we will prosecute aggressively when the evidence emerges.
Okay, great. A couple other items, and we're going to let you go home and enjoy the evening, what's left with your family. Doug Halter said, Eric, I really enjoyed the month we served together on the council, and happy to have you as our DA. Thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thanks, Doug. And it was great to get your book. I've opened a couple pages, and it's just nice to have your life story.
Perfect. And then Jen had asked, and I know this is going to be down the weeds, any info about a high-speed chase on Thompson on Tuesday?
Sorry, Jen. I don't know. I mean, if that's something I could easily find out, though, if you want to email me.
And then Julie's last question is, can you tell us about your thoughts on police reform? Is this necessary in our county?
You know, we're fortunate in Ventura County. I believe that we are indeed better managed, better trained, and we better hire. And that really manifests itself in some outstanding men and women in our police forces throughout the county. In fact, this is National Police Week. And as you probably read or heard, just within a 24-hour period, 2 more peace officers were murdered in California, one in Stockton, responding to a domestic violence call, and the other in San Luis Obispo while serving a search warrant. Now, having said that, we have in Ventura County active ongoing prosecutions of police officers who are alleged to have committed misconduct. If somebody breaks the law, if somebody is alleged to have committed a crime, whatever their status, whatever their standing, if the evidence comes forward and it warrants charges and prosecutions, that's what we must do. That's what the law instructs us. It's critical to public trust and public safety. But I just want to be very clear here that, you know, in my 13 years as a prosecutor, I've just found the men and women of Ventura County law enforcement to do an excellent job, and they've shown in many instances remarkable bravery and courage.
Great. Well, Eric, thanks so much for giving us some time tonight. I really appreciate it. We're excited to have you there. It's always good to have a face that we know as the DA. And I know you're going to be election next year. Am I correct? Are you guys next year, or is it 2 years from now?
It's actually next year. So
Okay.
the election is June the 7th of 2022. That is the primary.
Okay. And then if, and I know I don't want to get you into any, violations, but if somebody wants to help your campaign or volunteer, do they have a website or anything that they can go to, a personal website?
You know, Greg, I'm actually in a county office on.
Got it. I got it. I don't want to say that.
I just feel uncomfortable, doing anything that could appear campaign related. So, there'll be a point in the summer where the campaign will kick off, but for right now, I just want to make sure that I'm only speaking in my government capacity and not my campaign.
Yeah, you want to be in a polo shirt. You don't want to be in a coat and tie. I understand. So, Eric, thank you again. We're excited for you, and I know you got a lot of work ahead of you.
Yeah, Greg, thank you very much. And my thanks to the Midtown Community Council. Great to be before you, and nice to see my fellow Venturans again. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric. So, okay, so we have a couple housekeeping items to handle, and I'll kick it off first. The first one I have is just to let everybody know we have that Healy project that's being proposed over on Ocean near Seaward. It will be going before the Planning Commission on May 26th. It seems like that's bounced around a couple times, so it's there. And I want to ask the board members, do you have any announcements or anything you want to bring up or share?
Yeah, I have something to share, Greg. So there's actually a Sound Mind Mental Health Music Festival coming to the Ventura County Fairgrounds on May 20th. And it was in the Reporter this week, and it's online if you go to Concerts in Your Car. I don't know what it costs, but you can find out about the information. We've got some pretty big headliners. I just happened to see that today looking at the Reporter, and it's just like our meeting tonight was all based around Mental Health Awareness Month. So just passing that along.
Thank you, Dan.
Greg?
Any other reports?
Greg? I just quickly want to say, remind people that we're not going to meet in June.
That is correct. Thank you very much. Just to let everybody know, as Pamela just said, we are not meeting in June with high school public graduations going on. So we will be back in July. So Christine, did you have something?
I do. Justice for All Ventura County is also doing Justice in June events. I believe the first one was this past Tuesday. And if you check in on both social media, Facebook, Instagram, and our web and the Justice for All Ventura County website, they're doing walks and talks about changing social forms and looking at new ways to bring justice for our community members.
Thank you. Karen, I know you got something?
Yeah, so just a last comment. If you're not a member, you can please sign up as a member. The form is on our website.
That is correct. We are going to make a big announcement, but you can now, it's automatic. So you can go on and fill it out and donate if you'd like. And so please do. We need to keep building up our membership ranks. So any other comments from the board? I don't think I'm hearing anything else. So thanks everybody for giving up your night. I appreciate it. And have a good weekend. Thank you.